One of the things that you need to know about Creature is that everything is a mesh. Now, this differs from many other programs in which sometimes when you import an external texture or image into your animation, it comes in as sort of a quad, and then you have to do additional things to actually generate a mesh out of it. Now in Creature, everything is a mesh, and this allows us to do very, very interesting stuff, like creating very organic shapes out of characters. Creature is just as adept at manual keyframe animation as it is at its specialty, procedural animation. Now, if you just want to animate manually in Creature, you can extremely easily. Every single rig set up in Creature is already ready for manual animation. Let me demonstrate. Let's step to frame 5, and what if I just rotated the limb over here? Okay, now you can see I've just set a keyframe at 5, and it nicely interpolates between frame 0 and frame 5. If I go back to frame 10, and I move it back like this, I've set another keyframe, and you notice the animation knots data window has been updated as well. So this is basically manual animation in Creature. It is not that much different from any other program you're accustomed to. Now, in addition to that, Creature also presents you the full animation splines, so you can tweak and easily ease in and ease out curves. Now, animation curves, as you know, are very useful to get the timing right, and any sort of acceleration or velocity, impact or feel can be easily tweaked with animation curves. Creature shows you the entire animation curve all the way across the timeline, not just between two keyframes, which is a very, very powerful thing. You can also change the type of curve. You can change how it bends, like you can automatically set everything to an S curve, or you can set everything to linear. Now onto the topic of manual animation again. Creature actually works really well for people who love to use the stylus. If you wanted to pose a chain of bones easily with Creature, you don't actually have to click on each individual bone and pose them with the mouse. That's kind of tedious. What Creature allows you to do is to essentially select a chain of bones and just literally just draw a curve. And you can see you have things that pose in space according to the curve you're drawing. And this basically works very well with both the mouse controls and a stylus. You can keyframe these over time. Let me show you. So if I'm at frame 0 here, and then if I step to frame 5 and I draw another curve, and if I step through, you can see I'm basically changing the shape of the bones and the shape of the curve. And if I go to frame 10 again, there you go. So this tool, this curve posing tool, is very powerful and works in tandem with both a stylus and a mouse, and helps you pose long chains of bones and limbs very, very easily. Right, let's talk about the topic I'm very enthusiastic about, procedural animation, and this is where Creature really shines. So here's an example of procedural animation, and this is a hybrid example because this is typically how you use procedural animation in Creature. Now, procedural animation by itself might be a bit limiting, but when combined with manual animation, it becomes an extremely powerful, time-saving, and high-quality tool for your animations. In this example, what's going on is that there are a bunch of physics motors driving almost the entire character. The physics motors are driving the hat bones, the chain of bones over here. You can see it responds with a nice secondary reflex motion. It's also driving the breathing motion of this character. However, there's a couple of actions that you probably won't be able to animate procedurally, and that's basically manual animation. Now, the bones over here, which basically rotates the character down, that's just manual keyframe animation. And so in Creature, what's really, really flexible and powerful about the system is that you can basically pick and choose which bones or which set of bones or meshes you want to procedurally animate and which ones you want to just manually drive with keyframes or whatever you want. And so this combination, this hybrid procedural manual system, allows you to generate very high quality animation very fast. And you can generate secondary motion, leave secondary motion to what Creature does best, and then do your directable animation, your acting and other things that you want to manually animate without the procedural system. So when combined together, you can get some amazing results. One of the things that Creature is really good at is animating deforming objects. In particular, it's really good at animating effects like cloth, flesh, and hair. In this example, this zombie character is driven almost entirely by Creature's advanced soft body physics and bend physics motor engine. Look at how the cloth and flesh realistically bends, folds, and reacts dynamically to the overall motion of the character. All these effects would be very tedious if you wanted to animate them manually, but in Creature they're extremely trivial to achieve. Taking the idea of physics and forces a step further, Creature even includes wind force vectors to drive the cloth and hair of your system. This example demonstrates the wind force system in Creature perfectly. Now, the cloth is driven entirely by the new force field motor, which essentially drives a force field, it overlays a force field on top of the character, and you can control the direction, the turbulence, and other wind parameters to be able to make a subject with cloth flutter in the wind. This is extremely useful for various situations, as you can imagine. As I mentioned before, Creature doesn't just do procedural animation. You can even do the most traditional of animation, which is essentially sprite swapping. In this example, the flames are actually just sprite swapped images with a twist. These sprite swap images are driven by the physics engine, so you can see the flames literally bend with the physics, allowing you to create wavering flame effects. Now here, with the sprite swapping engine, you can actually insert images in to Creature and swap in different sprites. You can also control the order in which they're swapped in. You can also actually loop them and set the repeat num and the frame delta to give you perfect control over how you want the images to be swapped into your frames in Creature. And this is the end result. If you wanted to animate a character following a path, you can do it very, very easily in Creature. With the path bone motor system in Creature, you can basically define a spline path, easily shape it, and then have the arc drive the overall motion of the character. Now this arc can be applied to a single bone or actually a chain of bones, as in this case. So in this case, a chain of bones are actually following the entire arc, and that allows the lizard in this example to bend really, really nicely to the different curves as defined in this example over here. Now, Creature isn't just restricted to regular animation. If you wanted to apply any kind of special filter effect, like pixel art, you can easily do that in Creature as well. You can basically add different kinds of GPU accelerated features to Creature to achieve the kind of effect you want. In this example, I've added a pixel art filter to it. I can configure how blocky the pixel art is, so this allows you to easily generate pixel art for your game assets or other art purposes. There are also a whole host of other filters you can add to this character. You can add things like outline, which will basically generate some kind of stroke on the character. Now this might be useful if you wanted to create a sort of a manga-ish stroke outline effect on the character. A game asset might look really good in the editor itself, but as we all know, performance is very critical when you export it to your eventual game engine. Creature allows you to actually decimate your triangles and optimize your assets for your game engines. So in this example, I have a dragon here with quite a few triangles, and if I wanted to reduce it in resolution, I can basically set it. I can dynamically remesh the character to lower the resolution to target different devices. As you can see, the quality is barely degraded, and yet this is already 29% of the original. And you can see the wireframe mesh over here. So using the advanced export remeshing feature, you can easily author your characters in high resolution, which is probably what you want, and then export them to low resolution depending on your target device. Creature exports to most major game engines, including the ones on the web like HTML5 with WebGL. In this example, you can see a sample Creature animation running live on my web browser. You can also run Creature in many popular game engines like Unreal 4 and Unity. Please check out some of the really cool Unity and Unreal 4 demos on the Creature GitHub page. There are a whole host of features I haven't covered in this video. You can do motion capture rig transfer, you can animate the flapping wings of birds on 2D characters, and you can animate swinging tongues and growing limbs and trees and plants with Creature. To find out more, please head over to the Creature website and check out the amazing features in store.